who would you say is the greatest fighter you ever covered? You know, like whether it be Chavez or Mayweather or Lennox Lewis or Pacquiao. You know, who would you say?
All of those.
I mean, yes, but if you
Every
narrow it
single
down to
one.
one,
I mean, look, uh,
Roy
Lennox,
Jones.
Lennox on his best nights was beyond awesome. He was a very, very gifted heavyweight, and he had everything that you can look for. And so I would call Lennox the number one heavyweight that I covered. Although, I didn't cover the early George Foreman. I covered the second George Foreman, and what he did with Moorer was intellectually amazing, great, almost unsurpassed. It's really hard. It's very, very hard to isolate any one person as the greatest fighter ever. You know, People who love defensive counterpunchers and skill would say, "Hey, wait a minute, what are you talking about? You covered Floyd Mayweather," and yeah, he was about as good at that as anyone could be. But I lean toward fighters who could excite the crowd because of their will toward violence. It's a violent sport.
Yeah, I understand. All right, so who who's your favorite? So this has nothing to do with who's the best. Who's the favorite fighter you ever covered? Like when you were sat down and it was like, hey, June 12th, you're gonna, we're sending out to Vegas to cover so and so's fight. Who was
Well,
your
I'll tell
favorite?
you this, okay? I I will say this because when I first got into the sport, boxing needed someone who could carry the sport and preserve and improve and elevate its market value, and that required somebody who had glamour, who had style, who had some skill, and who was willing to fight the best every time he went into the ring. And that was Oscar De La Hoya. Oscar De La Hoya did more for boxing than any other fighter I ever covered because of his willingness to fight the very best fighter he could possibly fight every time he went into the ring. And um, Oscar De La Hoya, I love to say this because I really believe it's true. Oscar De La Hoya sold more tickets to individual women who bought the ticket than any other athlete ever in the United States. There may be a European soccer player who's in that league, but in the United States of America, no athlete I've ever known of sold more tickets to individual women who bought the ticket, not needing a man to take them, not needing a man to buy them the ticket, than any other athlete. And that is a tremendous value to bring to a sport.
Listen, if I was covering these events and I see a fighter bringing all these women, he would be my favorite too.
I'll never forget, he fought a guy named Patrick Charpentier in El Paso. And the fight was in the football stadium in the Sun Bowl, where the Texas Tech football team played, or Texas El Paso football team played, I should say. And he drew close to 50,000 fans that day. And I remember I went up to the top level of the stadium and looked down at the road where people coming up the road to come into the gate. And there were bunches and bunches, 4 women, 5 women, 6 women, 3 women, no end in these groups of people coming to the fight themselves to see Oscar. And I remember thinking, what other American athlete ever had that kind of appeal? And I can tell you who it was. It was the first fight I ever saw. It was Sugar Ray Robinson.
Sugar Ray Robinson.
He had that kind of appeal. And Oscar duplicated it.
Okay.
He wasn't as great a fighter as Sugar Ray Robinson,
For sure.
but he duplicated the appeal for women.